Good afternoon. My name is Tamara McCaw, and before I call this meeting to order, I would like to note for the record that I will serve as the acting chair of this meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation for Monday, July 22nd, 2019. I'd like to note for the record that this meeting is being webcast. The directors have received the relevant written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest member to the board, Ethel Tyrus. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Tyus, E.T., who was recommended to serve by New York City Council Speaker Johnson. Welcome. It's great to have you on board. Thank you.
Welcome.
Consistent with the policy of our parent corporation, we welcome public comment on the items of the following agenda. After each, and I just want to make a note of this, after each item is presented and any comments are received from the directors, we will allow members of the public to provide comments. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes and should only address the item that is under consideration. You will note that the final item on our agenda today is titled Public Comments. At that time, we will have an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments on any non-agenda related matters. Please keep in mind that it is our intention to try to conclude today's meeting by 5 p.m., which is our allotted time. Now, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I would ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will then be sure that you may recuse yourselves from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Hearing none, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the directors' meeting from March 15th, 2019. Does anyone have any? Everyone has those? Any question, comments, additions, or deletions?
There's one correction that's needed where the word perfect was used instead of percent. So I can't really put my finger on it at the moment. But if a word search is done for the document, it'll be found. Perfect should be replaced by percent on page 10.
Page 10?
Paragraph 3, minimum 25% instead of perfect for affordable housing needs.
You said page 10?
Page
Paragraph 3?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Jason to clarify that each of the 4 sites expected to commence construction in the future will have at minimum 25 perfect affordable
housing.
Okay. Right. So can we entertain a motion for approval with the amendment? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Toby, I'd like to ask you to, Toby, to request authorization for the corporation to recommend that the ESD directors amend the modified general project plan. Toby, whenever you're ready.
Sure.
Oh, do I need to move out of the way?
Yes.
Oh, get my stuff. Sorry. If you don't mind.
Good afternoon, directors. Good afternoon, members of the staff and public. The AYCDC directors are requested to recommend that the ESD directors amend the project's modified general project plan as detailed in the materials that you've been provided. The proposed modifications have undergone the analysis required for the approval of modifications to such a general project plan. They have been analyzed by environmental review experts, engineers, and traffic specialists. The proposed modifications do not require supplemental environmental impact statement. The project has been the subject of prior environmental reviews, namely the 2006 Final Environmental Impact Statement and the 2014 Final Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQA. The proposed modifications would not result in any significant environmental impacts not previously identified in the project's environmental review. I provided here an outline of the amendments, and to allow for a more focused and detailed discussion, I will present each item, and then I will take questions and comments so that we are more focused and I don't have to keep repeating the data. The first item relates to the B5. Building 5 is located on the corner of Atlantic and 6th Avenues. The modification takes into consideration the presence of Long Island Railroad structures and equipment directly below B5. The building support columns and foundational footings have already been installed to accommodate the items that you see on this slide in front of you, which include the Long Island Railroad drill track, which runs below the site through the B4 parcel footprint, the Long Island Railroad 6th Avenue access ramp, which starts at street level and then runs below grade, and the Long Island Railroad electrical substation, which is located on the southern half of the B5 parcel, in addition to the west portal, which provides access from the rail yards to the Atlantic Terminal, Long Island Railroad Station. This slide shows the current footings for the building in relation to the Long Island Railroad infrastructure that was just described to you. The proposed modification would shift the building's development envelope towards Atlantic Avenue and extend the envelope slightly in the east-west direction. This slide here shows an overlay of the current design guideline envelope and the proposed B5 envelope. I'll note that the modification does not change the overall size, lot coverage, or height of the building. And as a recommendation, I'm providing what is the current B5 design guidelines drawing and proposed parcel 5 design guidelines drawing.
Can you do that again?
Sure. This is the current. This is the proposed. Current proposed. Current proposed.
Yeah, I don't think they're not totally lined up, so it's a little jarring, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's the current is from 2006, so of course technology has changed,
Right.
updates in the way things are presented. But if you look at the measurement, the overall height of the building still remains 397. As it's presented here, it's just that we're looking at 15 years in technological advances in Adobe Word. Any questions on the B5? Any questions from the public? I'll move on to the next item. I'll note also as I go through these modifications and amendments that they were previewed to the
Toby,
committee.
can I?
Yes.
Are we going to do, if you're
It's
doing
one
them?
vote.
No, what I'm saying is if you're allowing us to give you comments after each one, will we then do public comment at the end of it?
No, after each item.
So should I have opened it? Yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure that I'm, is there any public comments on the B5? Okay.
I wanted to note also, as I make these presentations, that these modifications and amendments were presented to the community during the July 16th Quality of Life meeting. There were a number of questions, concerns, and ideas that were presented by members of the community. And we've been responsive to those items, and they're definitely included in my presentation. Specifically, in showing the current B5 parcel and also the proposed B5 parcel. The next item, when this item was presented at the Quality of Life meeting that I just noted, the modification was described as allowing for 100,000 square feet of commercial use at B12 and B13. In response to the questions and concerns from the public, staff have reviewed the general project plan and the project documents and found that the 336,000 square feet of commercial space contemplated for the project was specifically intended to be commercial office use. After review by the project team, in-house and external counsel, and environmental consultants, the modification has been revised to allow for recreational use instead of commercial use. The proposed use is more in line with that of the community facility designed for this parcel, which would be a use that would provide recreational services to a residential community. The modification amends the description of the permitted uses in the design guidelines to allow for the development of a 105,000 square feet indoor recreational facility. With this amendment, approximately 96,000 below-grade square footage can be leased to the operator for the operation of a physical culture establishment at parcels B12 and B13. The recreational facility will have a field house of approximately 60,000 square feet and a fitness center of approximately 45,000 square feet.
So Toby, this document misspeaks when it says B14 there. Is that right?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
that's just an error on my part.
Yeah.
Apologies. It should be 13.
Yeah.
I will make that edit form. The indoor recreational facility will occupy approximately 9,000 square feet on the ground floor for the facility's lobby and check-in use. As described in the slide, the programming at the recreational facility will include gymnastics, soccer field, and a learn-to-swim pool. The fitness center will mirror the programming of a traditional gym, health and fitness programs, exercise classes, the likes. You'll note that this modification does not result in additional below-grade square footage not previously considered in the project's 2006 FEIS, Final Environmental Impact Statement. In 2006, the project's parking requirement was 3,670 parking spaces. Subsequent modifications to the project have reduced this project's parking requirement to the currently approved 1,200 spaces. Using a standard measurement of approximately 200 square feet per parking space, this represents approximately 500 square feet of below-grade space that will not be built at the site. In comparison, the proposed modification would include 96,000 square feet of below-grade space. Similarly,
Can you just repeat those figures again, please?
sure. In 2006, the project required 3,670 parking spaces. After subsequent modifications, the current parking requirement is 1,200 parking spaces. Using standard measurement, approximately 200 square feet is allotted to each parking space. This represents approximately 500 square feet of below-grade space that would not be built out at the project.
Not 500.
500,000 square feet
Okay.
not built out at the project. In comparison, the proposed modifications would include 96,000 square feet of below-grade space. In analyzing the request, there was analysis done to look at the possible traffic impacts of said use. At a similar facility with similar programming, it was determined that on a weekday, approximately 2/3 of the patrons arrived by foot or by bicycle. On the weekends, approximately 3/4 of the patrons arrived by foot or by bicycle, the balance of which was offset by those who arrived by public transportation. Additionally, there were some concerns about the level of excavation required to permit the below-grade use. But it's noted that the same excavation depth for the B12 and B13 parcels would equate that which was required for the B14 site, which also currently has a parking garage. Happy to take any questions.
Directors?
About the B
Gil?
recreational facility.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're very clear about this. This description, this excerpt, the description of the project here that's part of Exhibit A.
Sure, he's
The nine,
referencing, I just want to, because I can see that.
this is the
project
map
map.
I'm looking at.
Exhibit A.
We are showing 336,000 gross square feet for office, 247,000 for retail.
Yes.
So how will those numbers change how would they change if this is approved?
This modification does not change any of the currently proposed, approved square footage for the project. It doesn't change the commercial usage for office because this isn't applicable. It's not commercial office use. It doesn't change the 247,000 gross square footage for retail, as that's retail that's expected to be at grade.
So this
retail
is
use below the building.
okay. So just so we're very clear, this is 96,000 feet of new development rights. That's what we're talking about.
It's not new development rights, as I described. The project initially expected to have well over 750, approximately 700,000 below-grade square feet of parking, right? And we haven't counted the parking garages and the below-grade uses at the project towards the project's total gross square feet.
No, but they were all analyzed in the EIS.
That is correct.
I don't believe anything like this has ever been analyzed in an environmental impact statement. Is that correct?
It was analyzed
This
as a
facility?
result. This facility was analyzed.
This specific use.
This specific use was analyzed, yes. It didn't, the significance of the modification didn't trigger the need for a supplemental environmental impact statement because it didn't introduce any adverse impacts that hadn't previously been studied under the 2006 EIS or the 2014 SEIS. And so if we had
Just finish, let Toby finish.
if we had considered at the project's inception that we would have the ability to have over 700,000 square feet of below-grade use, and that's been analyzed and studied. This 96,000 square feet, where there have been subsequent 500,000 square feet reduction, is applicable to that. Additionally, the impacts that could have been generated by this fitness facility, trip traffic, any environmental concerns, were also analyzed by the project team and also consultants, and it was evaluated that it wouldn't require a supplemental environmental impact study.
Okay.
So if I may, what's the maximum occupancy of this space, weekday and weekend?
In terms of like people, I don't have that number in front of me, but
That would be an important one to understand, though, in terms of the impact.
well, we looked at the trip generation. We looked at how many people would be coming in and out of the site and how that would impact traffic flow.
But those proportions, the 3/4 you mentioned, for
Those are
example, what's the,
proportions.
you know?
What's the base
yeah,
number?
Yeah.
We were looking at a similar facility, looking at the,
Okay.
like, if there are other recreational fitness centers, field houses, looking at how folks would arrive at the site and how that traffic would be impacted.
But today, for the purposes of this vote, we don't know what the maximum capacity for the proposed facility is that correct?
We can try to find out, you guys know.
Okay.
Yeah, we can try to
Okay.
find out.
Yeah.
Lisa. Any other questions? I thought I saw some other hands. Ethel?
Yes, I'm just curious as to how you could do the analysis of occupancy without a number, at least from the fire department, and it would track back to whether or not this is a significant change on the secret, because it's going to encourage or attract a large number of people to come in, not cars. You've got the spaces for the cars. Okay, so now we're talking people coming in to use that space, and we don't even have an FDNY capacity occupancy number on which the analyses had to have been based. But
Is your concern, may I clarify, is your concern about there being a fire hazard? Like, is there, or is it that the facility wouldn't, because you mentioned the FDNY, so.
yeah, they usually give an occupancy number.
Right, but the building, like the facility itself would still be required to get a physical culture establishment permit. They would still have to go through the relevant DOB requirements. And
Okay, so what number how did you get to an occupancy number or maximum capacity?
We weren't,
Well, the tech memo would have assumed certain trip generation.
right,
And the code occupancy number is 1,200.
100.
Which means,
That's max.
Max 1,200 people at any given
Egress-
time.
Maximum
The egress that it's designed for.
1,200 people at any one period of time.
That's 10,000 square foot, no, 100 square foot per person? Yeah.
Okay, so that would, it would be helpful to me if I could see more of the analyses, maybe a summary.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Yeah,
Maximum.
the number, the figure that was provided is maximum capacity. That's standard. And so,
1,200 people.
yeah, we're just for a similar use.
But I think it should be clear, the facility's not going to have 1,200 people all at one time working out. Because no, gyms are not designed, or these types of facilities are not designed for everyone to be there all at one moment.
No,
So, you know.
Go.
That's the business model for a gym. I agree with you completely on that point, but this, we're talking about maximum capacity, and that number I think we heard was 1,200. Let's just stick with that for a second. So our modal split means that during the week, 900 people will walk, and on weekends, sorry, I'm slow on the math, more like 1,000 people will walk. So 200 people will take cars on weekends, and 300 will take cars during the week if the max capacity
I'm sorry, I
would be
didn't
met.
state vehicular usage was public transportation. It was either by foot, by bicycle, or public transportation. And also, we're using a very high number of capacity here, so I think we should allow for there to be
Okay.
additional percentages that will be taken off of them.
Could I ask, what did the state assess as the economic value of these new rights?
We're not required to assess the economic value of those rights.
Okay, I'd like to just say that I did a little research of my own. I did speak to a subject matter expert in this field who estimated that this space as a master lease would bring about $100 per square feet, and subdivided for individual operators would bring about $150 per square feet. So it's between $10 and $15 million a year of revenue to the developer that we're talking about improving as a function of this new space. My question is, what's the public benefit, the offsetting public benefit that comes with this?
First, I'm sorry, I can't speak to the numbers that you just provided. I don't think that's within the scope of what we're presenting here. But I think additionally, we're providing the ability to allow for community programming that would be accessible not only to Pacific Park Atlantic Yards residents, but to the community at large. If you look at the services and the programming that such a facility could bring, soccer fields, right now, if you look at the area, the closest two soccer fields, one would be in South Slope, the other would be in Sunset Park. The learn to swim facilities are also not within close range of the project site, and also just gymnastics facilities, just creating a more integrated space. You're allowing for there to be usage in which those who are residents and members of the community in the surrounding neighborhoods would be able to benefit from and allow for. I don't know if we can put a dollar figure on that, but.
Can I just, as a coda to that, I'm interested, just as the way the proposed project is laid out categorically, even though this is covered in an enclosed space with various degrees of programming, is the notion that this portion of the project in service to the community is tantamount to open and public space? Do you see those things as being similar? The provision of open space for use by the public and the introduction of this facility that has some semblance of connection to the community? I mean,
I don't think one can equate the two, the open space.
It's an apple to a pineapple, but I mean, can you help me?
I mean, it's the same with other retail spaces that would be open at the project. If you're a fan of Van Leeuwen ice cream, you can say that that's the most important amenity that has been provided at Pacific Park. But again, can we make that such comparison? I don't think so, and I'm not trying to be flippant. Similarly, the project has allowed for there to be Brooklyn Clay under the B14 site. Brooklyn Clay is one of the largest women-owned, or I think it's the largest women-owned ceramics facility, which allows for programming. It supports the idea of creative and artistic expression. So there are various resources and there are various community amenities that this project provides. I don't think 8 acres of publicly accessible, integrative, interactive open space can be equated with such a facility, but I think it's important that we look at health and wellness, we look at programming that would encourage and also provide such things as after-school programming, sports programming, and resources.
I agree with that.
Yes.
And the alternative use of this below-grade space would either be for a parking garage that's been determined to be not much larger than needed,
Right.
or office space.
No,
Correct?
not office space or private use. Right now, as it is, the developer could, excavate to the required level and provide private amenity to the residents of B12 and B13.
Gil?
If I might, so this space was described in the GPP, the ground floor space for B12 and B13 as being small local retail.
There will still be small local retail that will be available at B12 and B13. This doesn't take away from that.
Right, but this is a destination recreation center now. It's not just small local retail. And I guess, we've heard about the tech memo. I guess I don't really understand why the directors weren't provided with that.
Yeah.
This came up very, very quickly. We only understood that this was new space at the Tuesday night quality of life meeting, and we got the board materials around lunchtime on Friday. So I suspect the tech memo, and I guess it already exists, but I would like to see the analysis in the tech memo because, you mentioned the 2014 SEIS. I want to point out for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with the 2014 SEIS, the reason it was produced was because there was a court order Because in 2009, the MGPP found that an EIS was not necessary, and a Supreme Court of the state of New York later found out that it was. So I'd hate to see us go down that road again here. I think the directors and the public should be provided with the analysis that was done in the tech memo.
I agree.
Duly noted, the
100%.
tech memo is currently in draft form. It's under staff review.
It's not done.
It's in draft form and under staff review, and as
It doesn't seem like we're ready to give this the support it likely deserves because we don't have that background information. Health and wellness is definitely something that we need to look at as a community, and if this additional use as a gym is going to do that, I'm all for it, but it doesn't seem to meet with the analysis. We're going to high density, extra traffic, encouraging and attracting large number of people, all the things that would require an additional environmental analysis, which doesn't seem to have been done. So it would have been a lot easier if that tech memo had been provided to us earlier on, so we wouldn't be asking all of these questions.
Well,
So
can
let me answer the tech memo
But just,
question.
I just, something that Toby said, it says in the materials that the memo concludes. In what state of incomplete is it? Is it stylistically incomplete or?
So the tech memo is not complete until the ESD directors
I see,
approve
I see,
it
I
or
see.
accept it.
I see, okay.
And so at this point, it remains in the draft state
I see.
until they do that. It does not become public until they do that. So that therein lies the rub here. So when we talk about the information and the data, from this standpoint, it's really at the staff level. And the
Yeah.
staff level is making a recommendation to you based on that information. And so that's the difficulty that we struggle with in terms of what to release.
I'd also like to, before we move forward, I'd like to clarify, I had just been provided additional information that the number that was quoted before at 1,200 was just the standard for maximum use at such a facility, but the actual number would be 300 persons for the capacity. It's just been clarified to me.
1,000 square feet
300.
300 anticipated
Yes.
use.
for
People.
Yeah.
Maximum
Not
capacity.
1,200.
Not 1,200. 1,200 was the
The
number that was
facility.
quoted as just a
Okay.
standard
I see.
to provide immediate response. For further clarification, it's 300.
That seems like a lot of space per person.
Well, we're looking at soccer fields,
Swim, field,
gymnastics,
pools.
and learn to swim.
Okay.
So, do directors have any more questions? I would love, it's an important topic, and to allow some community questions?
Yes, I have one. When can we see the memo? So that's my question.
When can you see the tech?
Yeah.
Tech memo cannot be released until the ESD directors accept it.
When will they be
I
meeting
can't.
to review it?
The ESD directors, I believe, our meeting's in August. Our next meeting's in August.
In August.
August 15th, which
August
is,
15th.
for me, it's an international holiday called my birthday. For the rest of you people in the public, it's called August 15th.
I'm going to observe that when we do environmental impact statements, those are released in draft for public comment, and they aren't held until a vote of the board of the ESD. So it seems to me there ought to be a way to release a draft of a tech memo, since that's a lesser piece of work than an EIS.
ESD has not released tech memos until the directors have accepted them. But you are correct, EISs in the draft form we do release because there's a law that governs that process.
I think it's very frustrating that we're being asked to approve something without seeing the material that was used to form, without even seeing the staff recommendation, other than to say we should approve it.
The
Here,
staff
here.
recommendation is the presentation that's being made to you now. This is similar to the process that we take with other projects across the state. And so we welcome any questions, any comments from the public as well, and we'll be prepared to follow up.
We'll just have a process question, because it seems almost like a chicken and egg situation. Are you hoping to have at that August meeting the recommendation of this body for purposes of approving
Correct.
the plan, but we can't, but there's some concern that we can't see the information
Correct.
going into that?
That is you described it perfectly well. That is the problem.
Didn't sound any better.
How do we
No,
solve
Daniel
it?
saying.
No.
I'm just trying to understand the process, because even if we were to, even if we were to table this, it wouldn't solve the problem, because the board wouldn't be discussing this issue until they have the recommendation of this body, so.
I think part of the problem that we're experiencing, or the problem that we're experiencing is we've never had an advisory development corporation. Everything is a binding subsidiary of ESD. And so this is the odd part or the uniqueness of AYCDC.
Well,
Understood.
we did propose to make it binding in 14.
Are there any public comment
Okay,
or
yeah.
questions? That way I can set up the timeline.
No comments from the public on this? Yes?
Hi, I'm Assemblymember Joanne Simon. I guess I'm a member of the public. So I can,
You very much are.
thank you.
I'll start the timer and note once.
Okay. I'm glad to see everybody here. I would like to just comment that I think there needs to be some, if it needs to be a legal revision, there needs to be some revision, because we have an advisory body that votes, and if they don't have the information they need to make an informed decision, then that decision is not going to be a good advisory decision to the ESD. So if we can do draft forms of the EIS, we know it's a draft, we understand it's a draft, we understand it's not final. I'm sure the people here on this board could understand what a draft means. A draft technical report, I think we can all understand that that's a draft. It would seem to me that it's in the interest of the public for this body to have as much information as possible before it's called upon to make a decision to vote on whether or not a change might be made. Some of these changes are arguably more extensive than others, but it's very hard to figure that out and to make a decision with any confidence, I would think. Can't speak for members of the board, but it seems to me as an observer that this is a bit of a circular process, and there needs to be a change in the way this happens. And I'm happy to carry that bill if that's what's necessary. But I don't think it really should need legislative change for the ESD to approve or to issue its review of the technical document, which is underlying to this body's review, subsequent to this body reviewing and making a recommendation. To me, that just seems backwards. And so I wanted to just share that with you all. I don't have another specific question, but hey, on the next topic, you might come around to me again. I don't know. Thank you.
So let me respond to
Okay.
Assemblywoman Simon. It's unusual that we do respond. Let me just say that we're going to take a minute and come back to that subject. So why don't we move to the next item? I think that everyone has abandoned me for a reason. If that's fair enough for everyone.
Super, thank you.
The project. My brother materials. The project currently requires 1,200 permanent parking spaces. As mentioned in the previous items, this is a reduction from 3,600 originally required spaces. Transportation trends have changed in unimaginable ways, including lower car ownership rates and the plethora of car and ride-sharing mobile application options. It is important to highlight, as we all know, that the project is located in the middle of a mass transit hub. There are numerous subway lines, buses, and Long Island Railroad trains that provide efficient and sustainable connection to the Manhattan city center and the outer boroughs. This modification reduces the project's parking requirements to 1,000 spaces. As illustrated in the parking plan, this will consist of 67 spaces already available at B3, 693 spaces on block 1129, of which 303 spaces are already available at B14, and 240 spaces planned at Site 5. On block 1129, the specific reduction is from 883 spaces to 690 spaces, 390 of which will be delivered under B12 and B15, with access through the B14 garage. Analysis of the parking demand during various arena events and review of monthly utilization of parking garages by project residents conclude that the reduced number of parking spaces would still meet the demand generated by the project's residential development while maintaining the existing and planned number of parking spaces, specifically for arena events. As a reference, please note that the parking utilization for residents at B14 is currently 0.43. 13 out of 298 B14 units are monthly users of the garage. At B11, it is currently 1.13. 34 out of 278 B11 units are monthly users. Additionally, not related to the project, at least 2 other garages have opened in the neighborhood, one on Dean Street and one on Pacific Street, providing a key number of parking spaces. Occupancy baseline for non-arena events by approximately 237 vehicles during the weekday and 187 vehicles on the weekend. On days in which some counts were performed, during arena events, peak demand ranged from 249 to 317. This included review of Nets, Brooklyn Nets, and Islanders playoff games, and also a Cher concert, which is having attended. Happy to take any questions with you guys.
Directors? Go.
Is there any timeline for the 240 parking spaces at Site 5 other than 2035? Sure.
I don't believe so.
Any other questions from directors before we open up to the public?
I guess the parking analysis is also in the tech memo, is that? Okay.
Any comment from the public on this item? Do you want to go to the next one?
Sure. As part of the project's transportation demand management plan, 400 valet bicycle parking spaces are to be made available to arena event ticket holders. This modification reduces the total number of required bicycle parking spaces to 100 and removes the requirement that the spaces be in an indoor and manned facility. The slide that's currently before you takes into consideration the site constraints. This modification looks at the logistical and also locational constraints of the proposed indoor storage facility. If you'll see, I apologize, we can't zoom in too much on the slide, but the various colored lines are showing both vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, in and out of the arena loading dock. There's a garage there in B3. There is a bus lane and also active traffic going down Dean Street. What we're proposing instead is to install 56 new racks and in the interim account for 44 existing racks at the Atlantic Terminal Mall, which will be included currently in the 100 space requirement. This slide shows the location of the 56 new spaces. 2 and 3 shows the total 44 existing racks that would temporarily be counted towards the 100 space requirement. This is, the red outline would just show the location of the 56 spaces. These are the existing racks at the Atlantic Terminal Mall. And this is just, for illustrative purposes, a diagram of what the racks would look like. The arena operator is committed to monitoring utilization and demand for the racks. The current site conditions with B4 under construction pose both cyclist and pedestrian safety concerns. After construction is completed at B4, new sites are available and additional racks can be installed. Of the survey data that's available for modes of transportation of arena event attendees, the concert for the group The National, which was hosted in coordination with the group Transportation Alternatives, generated utilization of only 99 guests who rode their bikes to the arena. Additionally, before B3 was constructed, the entire parcel site was used as bicycle storage, and those racks were never at capacity. It's been noted that there are those who believe that it would be best to provide for valet parking in the interim to test utilization, and then to consider shifting the requirement from it being an indoor and manned facility. We believe that this is the best route forward. One, because we would be able to ensure that there is the ability to utilize these racks both for non-arena and arena events. And we're committed to, once site constraints are no longer there, delivering additional racks. B4 is the building, if you were to become 6th Avenue, but South Portland continues, it's at the corner of Atlantic and 6th. The developer would go into more detail about the current state of its construction. But right now, there are construction barriers or fences, part of an MPT plan, Maintenance and Protection of Traffic Plans, that limit the site both along Atlantic Avenue and portions of 6th Avenue that wouldn't allow for the installation of additional racks. Happy to take any questions with regards to the Valley Rack.
Two questions. The first, with respect to the racks shown in locations 2 and 3 there, those are not in the Atlantic Yards footprint.
That's correct.
What's the ability for the state to ensure the continued maintenance of those to satisfy this requirement?
The arena operator will coordinate with the mall's operator to ensure that those racks are maintained and in good shape and available for utilization during arena events. They'll also, as I mentioned in my presentation, be monitored for utilization and demand. And once additional sites on the arena block present themselves and become available without posing site safety concerns for pedestrians and cyclists, additional racks will be installed.
So, okay, the second question is, it sounds like the highest utilization of bicycles for attending an arena event was the national concert. That was one in which Transportation Alternatives provided valet parking for the attendees. Is that correct?
I believe so.
So wouldn't that indicate that providing valet parking will encourage people to bring their bicycle to an arena event, as was envisioned in the Transportation Demand Management Plan?
That is correct, but this reduction, this modification is responsive to that number at 100. And with again, there will still be the opportunity for allowing for additional bicycle spaces to be made available at the site.
But I guess what I'm saying is, I think that the study that you mentioned demonstrates that there will be more utilization if there is attended valet parking, because that was what the actual experience was, not that it isn't necessary.
Yeah.
But I think, I'm sorry.
No, but I think it also illustrates that even with an event where there was organized by a transportation and bike-oriented group, and where there was specific advertising of valet parking for bikes, they still only got 100 people to ride their bike to the arena. What time of year was that?
I don't have it.
Was it, approximately, so they're taking into account an unusual usage for an unusual event that was specifically, bike-oriented in its design, and still only attracted 100. So I think, it seems to me that the reduction takes that into account, and it seems, will there be, one question I had was whether there would be signage in the number 1 spot that would alert people to the availability of additional parking.
The arena operator will include the location of the bicycle racks on its website in terms of means to access the site, and we can...
I think they should have on-site signage.
We'll also have signage, you mean
in other words, at number 1, saying if this rack is full, there are additional racks available.
Yep.
And that they should do the same once they're adding additional racks on the arena block as well, so that people aren't sort of riding around looking for a place to park, like drivers.
Any other comments from directors?
Toby, I'm interested in just the physical affect of the scheme. What is the proximity from the racks to the existing city bike system?
Oh, sure. So let's see if I can zoom in here, but it's better for me on the computer, but if you see that, do you see that truck that car that looks like a truck, that gray vehicle there? There were actually city bike stations right there. I think the number, let's see if I can zoom in. Is that maybe?
Right.
Yeah.
So right here,
Yeah.
those are city bike stations. There's also another city bike station on the other side of the Atlantic Terminal Station on Hanson Place. So there are quite a few city bike kiosks that are available for those who might not want to own their own bicycles. And the option to utilize those 2 spaces that are at the terminal was just, again, because they're directly across the street from the arena, but that doesn't mean that there aren't even more bike racks available across the project site. And specifically for, residents, there is a requirement that there is bicycle, this isn't applicable to this modification, but I thought it would be important to note that the buildings are still required to have bicycle parking in them for resident usage.
Oh,
Inside, yeah.
Yeah,
indoor,
yes,
but like
yeah, for the.
for residents.
Any other comments or questions from directors? I'd like to open up to the public. If the public has any comments on this item? Hearing none. Toby?
This modification allows for the transfer of 10,000 square feet from B15 to B12. The reduction in square footage to the B15 parcel does not impact the delivery of the required middle school or residential units. The building is already under construction. Such transfer allows for the development of additional common space areas and residential units, of which at least 25% will be affordable. The increase, is important to note, does not change the prescribed envelope for B12, and the developer will still only be allowed to build up to a maximum of 800 units at both B12 and B13. As this slide shows, B12 would change from 317,000 square feet to 327,000 square feet, an approximate 3% increase. Additionally, this transfer does not set a precedent site-wide. Any future requests for similar transfers, or should such be presented to us, would require staff review and analysis of the change in bulk, size, or any impacts to the buildings and to the community. Happy to take any questions about the modification.
So let me add one other thing. I know that these are quite a few modifications that are being requested. Let me just be real clear. We are taking these as they are. This is not a precedent-setting blanket wide. This is for these two buildings, specifically for these two buildings.
I can move on to the.
Yeah, which ones? And there are no questions from directors from the public? Nope.
No, I just, that was a very helpful clarification on the precedent point.
That was the lawyer in me, Daniel, that came out.
Okay.
This modification reduces the width of the project's major north-south walkways. A reduction in the paved area to a 12-foot wide walkway allows for more lawn and planted area. The reduced walkway widths conform with New York State Parks and New York City Department of Parks and Recreation shared use trails and New York City Department of Transportation and sidewalk requirements. As an example, the width of the pedestrian and bike path along the Brooklyn Bridge varies from 10 feet to 17 feet. It's difficult to compare this to the Brooklyn Heights Promenade, but it does cantilever over the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway at different sides. The walkways would be fully ADA compliant at a 12 feet width, and additionally, as comparison, for the B12 and B13 parcels, the reduction of 12 feet equates to approximately 3,000 square feet. This 3,000 square feet can be reprogrammed on site as an active use. For example, it could provide a dog run or such amenity to the community. I'll note that the reduction does not take away from, in any way, shape, or form, the total acreage that's required as the project's open space. The width reduction also contributes towards, from a more environmental perspective, the reduction allows for there to be thunderstorms. The width reduction also contributes towards a reduction in required paving for the site. Less paving meets a number of LED LEED requirement goals, including reducing urban heat island effect. If you have less paved area, less concrete for the heat to bounce off of, you have more planted area, more green space. The green space would be allowed for use. You can sit on it, you can walk on it, you can sit outside and eat your lunch, do yoga if you'd like. There are different uses that would be permitted. And as this slide illustrates, again, it shows the current requirements across various city and state requirements for walkways and trails. I'm happy to take any questions or concerns.
So this, I appreciate all of the information, including some of the additional information that is part of this presentation. So there's going to be an increase, I guess, of 3,000 feet of area that will not be paved under the proposed sidewalk reduction. Is there going to be at some point an update to the design plan for the open space from the one that was presented by Thomas Balsley a few years back. Are we going to actually get a new plan now for this? Is it going to flow through in that way?
I don't believe that these modifications would change the open space design concept that was presented back in 2015. The specific modifications to the open space design guidelines would be reflected in these materials, but it doesn't change what the programming or the plan was for the open space design concept that was presented by Thomas Balsley.
And what's the overarching goal of this change in terms of the public benefit of the open space?
Again, you get more planted area, you get more area that allows for more interactive use. You're not taking away anything from the open space. I think also when you think about a 16 feet walkway path, it feels more vehicular than a pedestrian path. And so if you allow for there to be more interactive use, more actual planted area, more lawn use, you just create, more green space. One can argue otherwise, but I think it's a design element that allows for there to be more use. Again, we're not taking away, this isn't a reduction of the total open space requirement for the project. It still would deliver the 8 acres required by the project.
Question.
Yes.
Will the pavement be permeable?
With the pavement?
The pavement be permeable?
Sorry,
I couldn't hear that.
Permeable.
Pavement.
Permeable. Currently, it's not designed to be permeable paving. It is in, the major pathways are planned to be concrete, which is what is currently within the 2 built section.
Can permeable pavement be considered?
We can definitely talk about it.
But there is site, on the existing open spaces and future open spaces, there is site drainage to capture rainwater and any other runoff water, and to be taken through a site-wide drainage system to capture that.
That's good, but I'm still asking if the pavement itself can be permeable, because I understand that type of pavement is available now.
Yes, permeable paving is a type of paving. It's something that often you see it most in pavers. So like individual unit pavers. It's like when it comes to permeable concrete or permeable asphalt, which asphalt wouldn't be permitted under this project anyway, it presents a few maintenance challenges. But permeable paving is something that is used, you often don't see it used in this sort of condition. You see it more as like a larger field of paving.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I just had a question. I'm all for this, but just your comment on the vehicular access, will this affect the ability of first responders to get into to use these walkways in an emergency if they have to?
No, it wouldn't. And the paths aren't designed for vehicular access. I think if we kept it at 16 feet, it still wouldn't be allowed for vehicles to get into the open space. But
I see. Okay.
Again, it's meant for pedestrian use. And I believe this image shows bicycle access, but that's still, the Conservancy might note that one should dismount your bicycles while in the open spaces, in certain spaces. Again, it's not intended for vehicular access.
No, I'm not. I'm just thinking in terms of first responders.
Yes.
Any comments from the public on this? And before Toby goes on? No?
Just one last question. Is there any analysis of this change as part of the tech memo?
That is correct. All the modifications are
Okay.
This modification allows for ventilation structures as permitted obstructions to the B11, B12, and B13, B14 north-south walkway zones. Vent structures were always contemplated as part of the open space, specifically for the Long Island Railroad yards. The idea of lanterns and fountains were presented to the AYCDC directors when the project's open space design concept was first presented from approval in 2015. These structures will allow for the ventilation of the below-grade parking garage and some aspects of the recreational facilities at B12 and B13. The structures will be interactive and would not diminish the function and public utilization of the areas. This change specifically is about efficient design. It is currently proposed that garage air for B12 and B13 would be vented through 4 separate discharge locations. 2 of the exhausts would be discharged from the building's facade. These systems and this design element is consistent with what was analyzed in the 2014 FSEIS. The other 2 garage exhausts exhausting the same air is what is being proposed to be vented in the open space. The air exhaust, the air exhaust from the parking garage would be mixed with the air exhaust from the below-grade recreational spaces and would not have pollutant emissions as it is consistent with the general ventilation exhaust, as it would consist of general ventilation exhaust. In the event of a fire or an emergency situation, the garage vents would purge the facility of smoke, but such would be an emergency situation requiring the evacuation of the area. Additionally, it is important to note that the ventilation to the open space would be in open air. The exhaust would immediately be diluted by the fresh air and not create a concentration or bubble of exhaust. The analysis found that the exhaust from the garage and parts of the recreational facility use meets the Environmental Protection Agency's regulations and would not result in any significant adverse air quality impacts.
Do you have a more detailed rendering of the structure, particularly the one on the playground site?
Thank you for asking that. Let's see if I can zoom it in. These are, again, for illustrative purposes, but you can see here. Metal plating.
Ah, okay.
It's actually on the, so that's the plaza on the left over here. And so there's a stepped seating area. It's actually on the back side. Of
Yeah, I see that.
That's actually a separation barrier, preventing individuals from climbing over. So that's approximately 4.5 feet to that top step. And then if you go over to the playground,
I see.
There's an interactive feature on the bottom 7 feet before the louvers commence above 7 feet up there. And so you're dispensing the air above the average height of units.
Any other questions from directors? Public?
I just have a quick question about the venting in the playground, and I see that it's above, about 4 feet high or something there. My question is whether or not the air will be scrubbed before it's released. Because we don't always have wind to disperse that, those emissions. So I'm concerned about that being problematic with kids playing in the area.
The same air that would be dispersed into the playground is what would come out of the other 2 vent structures that would be coming from the building sidewalks. But specifically,
I'm not sure I understand that that's an answer to my question about whether or not the air would be scrubbed.
does it require scrubbing? It doesn't require scrubbing. It will.
And that data would be in the technical memorandum, what the parts per million or whatever is, so that we would know that it doesn't meet the standard requiring some sort of scrubbing, because I think it's always good to scrub.
Thank you.
And there's no visible nature of the air coming out of that. All right.
And what's the alternative to this? What's the alternative placement for
currently,
these?
so these 2 structures, as I mentioned in my presentation, would be exhausting the same air would be coming out of the building itself, like if we were walking along the building sidewalk, just as you would any major structures or buildings in New York City, you're breathing in the exhaust. Like the air that we're taking in and taking out right now is going on to somebody on 3rd Avenue through the exhaust air. The alternative would be that you would lose and have to create even larger vent structures through some of the ground floor of the building. Correct me if I'm wrong, architects, but I believe if you didn't put those two structures there, then you would have to take away some space to put it into the ground floor.
The site area is so large, parking is underneath the entire footprint of the site, and the towers are relatively, or the footprint of the buildings is so small that, you know, in order to get the exhaust out, there have to be other locations besides just within the building. There's a significant amount of exhaust already going through the buildings and exhausting directly to the street, but these are at the far reaches of the parking garage that sits underneath the footprint of the L-shaped buildings. So if you can imagine a big rectangle underneath those two L-shaped structures.
And to answer the other comment would be, as the air goes out, it would merge with other air throughout the building, and it would be diluted, but so what we can answer with what exactly the percentage is per thousand, per million, what it is of diluted air.
Yeah, I think was there any look at, because it's a playground and there's a longer duration with people, so that was looked at?
That's right.
Just so I'm sure I understand, these are exhausting the garage, not the building, right?
These are exhausting the low-grade usage, more specifically the garage. A significant part of it would be the garage, and I think like 10 to 15% of the recreational use. But the air from the recreational use, that's exhaust from the recreational use, is non-contaminated.
Yeah,
It's just ventilated.
I think the way it was explained in the quality of life meeting is that the only time air would be exhausted from recreational use is if there was an emergency or a fire or something else in there.
No, that what was noted was similar to what I just said in my presentation, was that in the event of a fire, the reason why these, correct me if I'm wrong again, but the reason why these louvers are significantly larger and bigger is to take into consideration that in the event of an emergency and a fire, you needed to purge the garage of smoke. These would allow for immediate response to that situation.
Okay, so these exhaust both of the below grade uses, the garage and the fitness center.
Right, but approximately 85% for the garage use and 10 to 15% for the below grade recreational facility. And again, I'll emphasize that the idea of having ventilation structures in the open space will not be unique to parcels 12 and 13. For those of you who've been at the site, there's an entire rail yard. There'll be Long Island Railroad workers. There's an electrical substation that would all need to be vented through different parts of the buildings that would be part of the platform from B5 to B10, and also for structures that could be lanterns, follies, possibly interactive, walking trees. There'll be an opportunity for different considerations. Any additional questions
from directors? The public? Okay, I mean,
almost there, folks. You won't hear my voice much longer. This modification changes the distinctive architectural design element required on the facades of buildings 9, buildings 12, and buildings 13. The intent of this requirement was to make each building relate to each other when viewed from the open space. This modification reduces the requirement of a distinctive architectural design element from 3 facades on each building to 2 facades. This creates a visual break that is more harmoniously integrated while still abiding by the intent to create a visual interest that ties the 3 buildings together. To allow for a more clearer description of what the modification would be, we would be striking the words that are in red from each of the design presentations. So for 12 and 13, you're striking the eastern requirement, and from the B9 parcel, you're striking the western requirement.
Hearing none from the directors, the public?
I'll just, for the record, just re-ask my question from the other night as to why this is being proposed. The idea of distinctive architectural design elements and the look throughout the project was part of the original concept of this proposal. So And I can see why you would, it was on 3 sides in the first place. So I guess I'm curious, other than a visual break, which like nobody would just on their own just decide, oh gee, we need a visual break. So there has to be some reason why this is proposed to eliminate one of the facades from the requirement of having a distinctive design element.
Thank you for your comment. I've been informed that I'm not to answer. I'm supposed to just take comments. So
Okay,
thank you
well,
for
that's
your
my comment/question.
Thank you.
I look forward to someday having an answer.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I'm sure you'll get a phone call from someone talking to you now with that answer.
Okay?
Are there any additional comments?
So let me just clarify for everyone who is not familiar with, the comment period is designed for the public to comment, not for us to address the public. So. That's all modifications.
Just ask one question about the ventilation structures. Are they consistent with ventilation structures that have been designed throughout the city in modern architecture?
That is correct.
Design?
And it's also like technological advances have referred to about for a more detailed look at how it is that you consider the site constraints. I think as the architect noted, you have the parking garage takes up a considerable amount of the lot area. And when you're looking at the design to meet the requirements for the project, you want to be able to be responsive to that. But it's true that this building is currently being vented out, and if there's exhaust in different aspects of it, just as there would be any other building across the project. The existing project's buildings exhaust go through parts of the sidewalk. If you walk by it, you're taking in that there as well.
Thank you.
I guess just as a follow-up to that, at some point in the future, some parent or group of parents is going to ask, why is there a vent in my kid's playground? And I guess we'd want to be able to say that all other possibilities of placement were considered. And I guess I'm not sure I've fully heard that. I mean, if this is the only alternative, then fine. But it seems like we'd want to be able to give that explanation in the future.
No, thank you. And the reality is, as Toby said, we literally are going to have a small city underground.
Right.
With the LIRR, the number of employees, the trains, et cetera, and it was always contemplated to have exhaust throughout the open space. Adding these two additional was really just because of the footprint of the parking. So to answer that question, you're right, you're 100% right. When someone asks that question as a parent, why here? And the answer is, from a structural standpoint, this was the best and easiest and swiftest way to exhaust underground contaminants or what have you. So that's the. But you're right, Daniel. We need to go with it.
Yeah, and I guess the other concern is that you wouldn't want it to, in the end, reduce usage of the playground because parents were concerned about it. So
that's right.
Again, if it's really structurally the only alternative for placement of this venting structure, then we can live with it.
Let me just remind everyone, whatever is exhausted will meet all DEP standards by law. So I think what everyone wants to talk about now is what we exited on.
I think so.
So
Are you done with this?
we've come to a way that we can share information with you, and I think this will help all the directors come to be able to make a decision. The proposal is this, and I say it's a proposal because I want to couch it as it relates to the entire modification. Today, I'm asking you to make your recommendation on all other parts of this except the one related to the 100,000 square feet. We will then reconvene as a body over the next 2 weeks, no later than probably August 5th or 6th, around that time frame. In the interim, you will be permitted to come and review the document, and we will make staff available, as well as our consultants, to go through the technical aspects of that. Why are we being difficult is the question you all are thinking. So instead of you just politely asking, I'll answer the question. The reality is this document is a draft form. It is still a work product. and our directors have not accepted it. We do understand and respect your responsibility to be able to make a conscious and a very informed decision, so we will do that. Why are we doing it in small groups? Because if you all come together, you are in a quorum. And so we want to be able to set appointments, make sure we have the staff and the consultants available to you to allow you to review the documents and then answer your questions. So that would be what we can do. The Assemblywoman has asked us going forward if there are other types of modifications that are not major and that would trigger a larger SEIS, can we create a system that will permit you to have the information in a timely fashion in order for you to make an informed decision. So that's the idea. I only call it a proposal because I do want to vote on the other items, but this item we can table to give you the ability to share, for us to share additional information with you. Yep, yes.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the spirit in which it's offered. I guess two things. One, is it possible for the directors to review a copy of the text memo before meeting with staff? Because that would certainly put us in a better position to be able to discuss it. And two,
So let me answer that. Yes.
Okay.
We will be able to. The difficult part is we cannot release the documents. So if you wanted to make an appointment to come in and review it and then take a break or just go straight and then we have the consultants come afterwards, yes. We will be flexible enough to allow you to review it and then ask questions of the appropriate staff.
Okay, so to review it, we'd physically come here and read it here?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, I'm not trying to be cute, but I mean, can we make notes?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
Is it possible to use a VPN so that people don't have to come here to look at a draft?
Let us figure out if there's a way to, because it's not a released document.
It's a draft, yeah.
Let us figure out a way if we can do that.
A VPN, and then how would you, as directors, assemble a quorum once the other directors have had?
We would have to call another meeting.
Yeah, so that's the only thing I would mention, and I know that it could be challenging for us all to get together, but if we can sort of commit here right now, that if you're saying it's by 2 weeks or something, that would be helpful, because I know getting a quorum with our busy lives has proved challenging in the past. No, I just want to make sure that we're agreeing to deliberating on a proposal that is feasible.
I mean, the other option would be go ahead and approve it contingent upon you have an opportunity to review it.
No, I think we would prefer the former.
You can laugh at my proposal, but I've got to throw it out.
I think there's I can guess on the response to that one.
Yeah, so could I, but I had to ask. No, but I think,
okay, so just.
But I think two things to the point over here. We do need to get a commitment to have another meeting study on the books and plan, and give you an opportunity to plan your schedule. As relates to, are there other ways for us to make the document available for you to review and ask questions? We'll have to review that.
Yeah.
And I also just want to ask that we find some way to have some public discussion of what the environmental review entailed, because we're talking about adding a significant new project feature to a street that's had a lot of impact from project construction. That's where all the staging from the arena happened. They had a 16-foot high construction fence down the middle of that street for years. And these guys have really suffered a lot from this project. And we're now telling them they're going to get a new facility that has never been considered before and reviewed. I really believe that there's an obligation to explain the basis of why the no environmental impact finding was arrived at to the people who are going to live across the street from it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Directors, anything else?
Okay. So a motion.
Before you vote, there will be a comment from the public if you have nothing else, and then you all could act on what I propose to you.
Thank you. I guess in our conversation, I appreciate the effort that you've made with regard to looking at the technical memorandum, but it strikes me that there are two other places where looking at the technical memorandum would be helpful to informing board members' votes. And one is the reduction in parking. And the other is, I think, the issue that's been brought up with regard to the venting, so that people have confidence in that data. So So I would respectfully request that the recommendation be, the recommendations with regard to those two issues as well be tabled in the same way as the 100,000 square feet sports facility is.
It would seem like there's no impact of including those two things in the motions to be tabled anyway, because we're going to meet again no matter what. So I hope we can accommodate the Assembly members' suggestion.
That's up for you to discuss. No, I propose something that is, you are the directors.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. It's related to this, but have the transfers for B13 and B12 in fact closed at this point?
B12 and B15?
No, B12 and B13, the two lots where this facility will be located.
Oh, you mean in terms of making one tax lot?
The development lease transfers, have they closed yet?
Yes, the development leases for B12 and B13 have been transferred from Greenland to Tia Cornerstone.
Okay.
That was your question, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I guess in that case.
So I was going to ask for a motion to approve the recommendation to amend the modified general project plan with the exception of would it be number 2, the use of the 100,000 square feet for the indoor recreational facility and the ventilation structures.
And how about number 3, the parking?
I'm personally less concerned with that
About
one.
as am I.
Me too.
Yeah, so can I get a motion for what I just put forward?
Do it too.
So moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And against? Anyone abstaining? Just make sure everyone got the vote.
I think everyone voted.
Okay, good.
So just for clarification, the action that was taken allows for all the items except item number 2 and item number 3. Item number 2 is the 100,000 square feet recreational space. Item number 3 was item number 4 was the ventilation.
It was the ventilation. We have that as a 6B.
Is the ventilation.
Okay. Let me tell you this way.
Did I do
The
it wrong?
100 square feet of rec space and the ventilation structures, regardless what the numbers are.
Those two items.
Yes,
So the item.
that's why I said it
the
that
item
way.
was Proposed and approved absent those two modifications.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Marion, do you have a,
Yeah, my report's really long today. Scott, would you please come and give us an update of the project?
are you using this? Sorry, Dan, they need to give us a thing at the end here next time. There's a pop due.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Scott Solish, Executive Vice President of Greenland Forest City Partners, here to give you a quick project update on some of the construction work that's been going on since we last spoke, which was in March of this year. So what you're looking at here is what we call the East Yard at the corner of Vanderbilt Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. And this shows just Trains Park, but it's actually a pretty important milestone. We've turned over all 7 storage tracks to the Long Island Railroad, so the railroad is now fully operational. They're using all 7 storage tracks, the new drill track, the west portal, which is the lead track, which for those that remember involved the tunneling under Atlantic Avenue, and a new tunnel called the west portal that brought trains directly from Atlantic Terminal into the yard. The railroad's new office facilities, the NOE, the substation, they're all operational. So a pretty important milestone was reached over the summer since we last met. You can also see, when we last spoke, there was a pretty significant...
Thank you.
Must be contagious. There was a significant amount of space, what we call NPT, behind construction fences taking up lanes of Atlantic Avenue, as well as Vanderbilt Avenue, restricting pedestrian access, bike access, and car access. All of those have been fully restored, the median's been fully restored, so the intersection there looks like it did prior to construction commencing, so pretty important milestone. We're happy to say that all 7 tracks are now operational. We've restored the streets to their previous condition. Next slide. This, when I last showed you a picture, this is block 1120. This is the west yard between Carlton Avenue. You can see the Carlton Avenue Bridge with that yellow school bus parked on it, and 6th Avenue. When I last showed this to you, we were in the midst of demolishing the 2 buildings that were on this block. These are now fully demolished. So this is the site condition. This was last week. But you can see that the buildings are now grade, the fence has been pulled back, and the sidewalk is now open, as well as the parking lane is now restored. So this is the current condition of that. The next slide. And this is just a quick update. So this is the B15 site. This is across from 38 6th Avenue. This is just a picture of the MPT. Work's been going on at this site since March. This is the site with the DOE Department of Education Middle School. Excavation foundation work has been going on since mid-March. You can see that pedestrian access is closed on 6th Avenue, but there remains pedestrian lanes on both Pacific Street to the right of this slide and as well as Dean Street to the left of this slide. Then there's work going on behind the fences here. So currently excavating to go down on behalf of the school, and that work will continue for the next few months. And this is the B4 site. This is at the corner of Atlantic Avenue and 6th Avenue. We continue to do work on this site as well. The MPT is in place, so pedestrian traffic is closed on 6th Avenue, but it remains open on Atlantic Avenue. So everyone headed towards the transit hub or to and from the arena has safe passage around the construction fence, and excavation and foundation work has been going on here since April, and that scope of work will continue through the fall prior to the superstructure commencing. So just a really quick update about the construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Are there any questions from the directors for Scott on behalf of Greenland and the other?
Shoot. Is there any update on platform construction at the on 1120 and 1121?
It's still under design and being reviewed by the one.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Can I go to public comments?
So, well, actually, I would like to do one last thing, if we can, if everyone can look at their calendars, and at the end of the public comment period, we'll attempt to schedule the next board meeting so we can do that quicker. But we can go to public comment now, and then at the end of the public comment period, if the directors could, we can try to set up, schedule a meeting.
I think Gil had
Just one other thing, a little piece of old business. At our last meeting, there was a discussion about providing the directors with the transfer agreements and the completion guarantees, and we did receive a memo. We received a memo last month on this subject. One of the things that the memo says is something that was quite different than what was discussed at our last meeting, which was that ESD has recourse to the transferees for the affordable housing LDs should they fail to deliver the prorated numbers of affordable units by May 2025. However, the terms from the completion guarantee that would show that recourse as it's been agreed to by the transferees were not included in the memo, even though there was a citation for a section of the completion guarantee that contains them. In fact, actually, the memo didn't contain any language from the agreements about ESD's ability for recourse. So what I would like to ask, and I've spoken with Toby about this, but for the record, I'd like to ask that the directors are provided with the completion guarantees in full so we understand what recourse the state has on the affordable commitment.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So can we do public comments and then look at dates? Is that what you?
Yes, that's what I would, unless you already look at dates now, it's up to you.
Does everyone
Deb,
have their calendar?
Yes, calendaring. My desire would be give you everyone 2 weeks. so that we can schedule a meeting. The way this would work is we set a timetable of 2 weeks. In the middle of that timetable, we obviously would announce the next meeting to make sure we meet the notice period.
Are there any public comments?
No.
Okay, so I'll do public.
They were ready to look, that's why I arranged it. So my thinking would be the 7th, or the 6th, or the 5th. If that works for everyone here at 3 p.m. Maybe that clears us of everything else, because everything else at the end of the week, right?
Those days would work for me. However, I'm going to be out of town from the 29th through the 1st. So I'd need a way to be able to come to review the documents either before then or,
We can make the documents available most likely no later than Wednesday of this week.
Okay, all right, then that'll work.
I thought you said you were going to look into having a VPN
I am,
accessible.
but I was addressing his specific comment that he's about to leave. And I know for the fact that we're about to hit close of business now. They give me all day tomorrow. I know for a fact I can address his concern right this minute.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so 6th or 7th works for me, is that the day?
No,
Fifth or sixth.
5th or 6th, 5th or 6th.
This works for me as well. Monday, August 5th.
I can do
I
either.
can do it there.
Well, you'll have to party on without me. I'm out of the country that week. But
Wait a minute, we may want to join you.
well,
Jennifer,
bring the documents.
Jennifer and Jolene.
I'm available.
Jennifer,
I'm available. The 6th is better than the 5th, but I'll make accommodations.
if we can do the 5th at 3 p.m. is what I understand works for the majority of the people present. Right, we'll still need to get one more director, and there are 2 directors who are not here today.
Video conference?
Is it
Well, yeah, we could use some video.
So you don't want a video with us?
Sure. As long as it's from the waist up,
As long
yeah.
as they can talk. We'll worry about that later.
Okay, yeah.
Would it be-
We don't want to put that in the record. We don't put that.
As long as
Don't
it's
like a mess.
consistent with the open meetings law.
It
That's
would
right.
not,
Yeah,
it would
yeah.
not be possible to schedule the week of the 12th when Director Richardson will be back?
The ESD meeting is on the 15th, and I don't want anyone to say that we are pressing you to move that quickly. I'm perfectly comfortable meeting on the 12th. If you are perfectly comfortable understanding that ESD board is scheduled to meet on the 15th.
How, excuse me, how do we address this circular arrangement with AYCDC not being able to get drafts of reports before the meetings of the ESD directors? It just doesn't seem to be a feasible or logical flow of information and documents in order to make this a truly transparent and community-supported effort.
As relates to the EIS, that's something we have to figure out in terms of, in this instance, here's a tech memo, which is very different than an EIS. So we need to figure that out internally. I think we've found the solution right now. We need to look at a long-term solution related to the EIS. Other documents, we normally do brief you and we do share information with you quite quickly and readily. But I think specific to today, we've got to find a solution to that internally.
Thank you.
So do you all want to look at the 12th, or are you all fine with the 5th?
Either 12th would be okay for me.
Are you back?
Yes, I am. But
Yeah.
So why don't we look at the 12th at 3 o'clock, Debbie?
is that good for you, Dan?
Yeah, Debbie's going to be doing this thing with Side. She's gone next time. Let's do the 12th at 3 o'clock, please.
That works for me.
Okay. Then public comment period.
Okay.
We'll send out a.
Yes.
Okay. Ready? Now I'd like to lead us in the public comments portion of the meeting that I referenced at the beginning. I understand that we may have some attendees here today who wish to share comments that don't necessarily address items on today's agenda. At this time, we would like to invite those individuals to share those comments. Generally, I would ask that we would try to limit comments to 2 minutes. I would also like to say this is not intended to be a Q&A session. It is, however, an opportunity for those who wish to make comments to do so. With that being said, I believe that, Toby, you was people signing in to make comments. If you can help us keep track of time so that we stay close to 2 minute suggestion. And if you could call the first member of the public who wishes to share a comment.
I don't have any names, but if anyone on the public wishes to make comments.
Okay. There being no further comments, I want to thank the directors and everyone attending for your participation in today's meeting. Now that there being no further business, I will call for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Again, all.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.